Welcome to Digital Hospitality. I am your host, Sean Walchuk. This is a Cali BBQ Media production. I am so excited because today I have a co-host, and my co-host is a good friend, somebody that we work closely with. It is the co-founder and CEO of a company that we know and love called Marqii. His name is Avi Gorin, and his Instagram handle is at Avi Toe Burrito. Avi Toe Burrito. Avi, when was Avi Gorin taken? Is my first question to you.
So pros and cons of having a unique name here means it's very popular in Israel. And if there's ever a piece of new technology that requires a username, I am never first in line. I don't have at Avi Gorin on anything, maybe Tumblr, but like that's it.
What's your middle name?
I don't have one. We couldn't afford it when we moved here. I don't have a middle name.
This is going to be a great conversation. So for anybody that's new to the show, welcome to Digital Hospitality. We are obsessed with the intersection of content, commerce, communication, and community. All of those things live together on a smartphone. We have conversations with some of the most important technology founders and the most important hospitality leaders, and we're grateful that you're here on the show. Today we have Solomon Choi. Solomon, you can find him at Solomon Choi. He is a smartphone storyteller. So somebody in his leadership role, I was talking to him before the show started. I'm so grateful to have him here to share his wisdom with you, the audience, the viewer, and the listener, because he's doing some really, really cool stuff. You can find them also at Jabba Brands, Jabba Brands, also at 16 handles. He's also at Franchise Guy with a Z. He's got multiple handles. He's got lots of businesses that he invests in, that he believes in, and we're honored to have him on the show. Solomon, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
So let's get a little bit inside of baseball or inside of digital hospitality. Tell us, Avi, how did you and Solomon meet?
So before I ever actually got to meet Solomon, I had the pleasure of taking a handful of first dates to 16 handles. What a place. I didn't know there were that many Oreos in existence until I went to 16 handles. So Solomon and we've kind of floated through similar circles Sean, as you kind of went to the National Restaurant Show, we've been doing a lot of trade shows and conferences. And every time we got to interact with Solomon, I feel like another layer was kind of peeled back. And we finally got to break bread together last year in Dallas at FS Tech. And I got to hear the story and just learn more about. And every time we get to chat, I'm more and more impressed with what Solomon's done and what he's working on and doing next.
Solomon, why don't you let the listeners and the viewers know your origin story, your backstory?
Yeah, so my backstory.
Where do you come from and what are you building?
Sure. So, I guess kind of if there is such thing as a TLDR here is I actually grew up in Southern California. At one point I was running my father's restaurant in San Diego. So that was kind of like as close as we probably got from a proximity standpoint, even though we didn't cross paths.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I was able to learn kind of all facets of the industry, from operations to marketing to then joining a startup hospitality group and opening up a restaurant in Southern California, to then doing franchise development of a gelato franchise that the CEO of the company bought the rights for. So kind of all along that hospitality journey, I was able to learn kind of each division within a restaurant group. And I parlayed that in 2008. I moved to New York City from LA and decided, just as the subprime mortgage crisis and the Great Recession was happening, I thought it'd be a great idea to move to the East Coast where it snows and open up a froyo shop right in the center of Manhattan. So, that's what I did. I never looked back, but really armed with the experience that I had, and really this conviction that I'm like, you know what, if I can make it here, as they say, then I can make it anywhere. And opened up the first store through organic franchise development, was able to scale the company. At our height, we had 41 locations. We were in 6 states and 2 countries. I actually sold the company last year. So I was able to kind of complete that entrepreneurial journey, sold it to a multi-unit franchisee of mine, Neil Hirschman, along with YouTuber Danny Duncan. They joined forces. And so for me, like, that was a very compelling offer, both as the founder and CEO of the brand, but then also as somebody who invests and advises in the space. This is a move that I would have told any of my portfolio companies, you have to do this. They have a secret weapon. They're able to reach kind of that Gen Z market in a way that I couldn't and my team couldn't. So anytime I see kind of that unfair advantage, I'm like double down on that. And so here we are now. And then in the last year, I've been home. I've been dad. We moved from Manhattan to Long Island, and so bought a house in the suburbs. Kids are in school. That's been great. I dabbled into consulting. Realized like that wasn't really for me, but am now kind of en route to kind of building the next stage of how do I take everything that I've learned from being an operator, scaling a concept as an entrepreneur and CEO, selling it, and then kind of how do I take the learnings I have and be able to scale that right across multiple brands. And so be happy to share that. But working on kind of this food accelerator concept that I formulated several months ago, and that I've been kind of talking to industry folks and share that with Avi as well, and just really kind of formulate it in a way that adds value and builds community to kind of all entrepreneurs in the restaurant space that are looking to scale. So that's what I'm working on now.
Can you talk a little bit more about this unfair advantage? Because that's really the secret sauce of why we do everything that we do. I mean, how we turned our barbecue brand into a media company, why we have conversations, why we have relationships and friendships with people like Avi. But this unfair advantage that you speak of, you would think that most business owners and big businesses would understand what we're talking about. Can you get a little bit more deeper into that?
Absolutely. So I'll kind of start by using my own business as an example. So when I was in San Diego, I was in Mission Valley. My father had a all-you-can-eat Japanese seafood buffet, and it was a franchise.
What was it called?
And it was called Todai.
No way.
So, yeah,
You're Todai?
Yeah. So if you've been to San Diego or anyone in California,
are you kidding me?
Todai. Yeah.
How big is that
Maybe the one in
restaurant? What is that,
Tampa.
like 20,000 square feet?
That one was 21,300 square feet. It was the large, yeah, good guess. It was the largest Japanese seafood restaurant in all of North America. And
What?
and I got to, at the ripe age of 25, go down there and turn it around. Yeah.
No way. Unbelievable. Go ahead.
Yeah. So with that, that was kind of how I cut my teeth in the restaurant business, right? Kind of with with a behemoth of a business. And even in looking at my father's operation, I thought, okay, like you've been here for 7 years, sales are starting to go down. You had some other buffets that were, kind of copying the model, price cutting. He was like, look, I'm losing sales. What can I do? And so, went in there, turned service around, and then really took advantage of the fact that there were key tentpole holidays where Todai, which was, one of the value propositions for Todai was it was open 365 days a year.
Yep.
So not only can you imagine operating a behemoth of a restaurant like that with 100 people on payroll, 500 seats, right? Doing those types of covers and turns. But then you had, in addition to that, the key holidays, which in order of sales were Mother's Day, Father's Day, and Valentine's Day. And those were open all day. You didn't have that break in between lunch and dinner like you normally did. And so those days we would do 7 turns. So we'd see 3,500 people in one day. And so in looking at that again, like, and I think this is a very apropos example. I looked at that and I said, Dad, you joined this franchise in late 90s. This organization started in 1985. How come no one's ever thought of maybe increasing the price or offering something else on these days where you have this captive audience? Like, you can't do anything more, right? You're not going to get another customer in the seat, maybe, right? But that's not really the opportunity. And because it was a buffet model, it was a one price model. I said, the only way you're going to do that is to increase the price. And so, kind of unbeknownst to him, and I took it upon myself, and corporate hated me at that point. The franchisor didn't like me, but I said, look, like, I'm going to set a single day sales record, because if I can get $10 more from 3,500 people, that's an increase of 35K.
Yeah.
I've yet to work in a location that could do 35K in one day, but that's an increase of 35K.
That's insane.
And our cost of goods only went up by $1.80. And so, like, I mean, that was like that margin play was ridiculous. And so even in looking at that, and I, kind of took an ad out, and I think it was like the local cable station did our first, like, local cable TV thing.
Wow.
Took an ad out in the Union Tribune. And so I was using kind of
this is amazing. This is gold. This is worth my entire podcasting journey. This is fantastic.
And I positioned it as the super seafood menu because we already had over 200 dishes at the time. And so we had more choices than anyone could ever imagine, right? So we're not going to, but it was about quality. And so if you went into that Todai, there was an east wing and a west wing.
Yep.
And when you walk into the middle, you would see in each wing a mound of crab legs. And that was kind of like the wow factor when you would walk in. And I remember even with that, I said, for Mother's Day, what if we just upgraded from snow crab to king crab and you saw mountains of king crab, like all you can eat? Like that's ridiculous, right? That right off the bat, you just see that, you're like, that's totally worth $10 more. So we made a couple incremental changes. We were near Hotel Circle, so you had
Yep.
Radisson, Hyatt, Hilton, you name it, they're all there because it's near the convention center. And when I called all of them, and I remember thinking like, okay, I made a list, an Excel spreadsheet of what are all the hotels doing? Because that was really our main competitor, was like the higher end hotels that would have like a Mother's Day brunch. And that's what we were targeting, was Mother's Day brunch. All of them were, double, triple the price of what we were offering. And so it took some of the things that they were doing, like they did, roses for mom or champagne for mom. And so we did what? We did carnations for mom, and we did, sparkling wine with, plastic, flutes. And again, like all of that increased our cost of goods, I think by $1.20, $1.30. But we got like a 850 margin on every single person that came in, and that was super successful. First thing corporate did was they called the next day on Monday. They're like, "What did you guys do? There must have been an error. We got reported this. This doesn't make any sense. You can't do that type of number." And so when we told them, they took that. And so I bring that up because, again, to me, I was like, even in that moment of working for my father, who was with an organization that had been around since 1985, to me, I'm like, you have a unique advantage here, because a lot of times when restaurants are closed, or again, they're kind of looking at these busy days as their busy days. It's like, that's the real opportunity of captive audience. Ask for more by giving them more. So I think when you ask for more by giving more, I think that's a great, symbiotic relationship with the customer. Everybody wins, right? And so I looked at those types of opportunities. Fast forward, I was selling gelato franchises in Southern California. The CEO of a startup hospitality group I joined bought the rights, and this was back in 2006. So really, when Pinkberry was just cracking
Yep.
through the doors of LA, and that was my competition. I was like, I told my boss, I was like, hey, after doing some research, I was like, we're selling the wrong product, right? The market is asking for and looking for froyo, and we're selling gelato. It's not the same thing. They're both frozen dessert, but there's something different here. I don't see these women coming after yoga, rolling up their mats and going into like, an ice cream shop or a
Yep.
gelato store, but they're doing that with, so to me, like this idea that this lifestyle consumer is looking for something that is actually probably more competitive with smoothies, right, than it is with frozen dessert. And so that kind of unlocked that curiosity. And then fortunately, my parents, were friends with the very first operator of self-serve pay-by-weight frozen yogurt. They still operate today. Mr. Song,
Wow.
if you hear this, shout
Wow.
out to you for teaching me the business. But they've been
Amazing.
operating since 1990, and I met him in '07, and I said, "You have to teach me this business." And he was like, I can. I was like, look, I know how to do franchising. I know how to do all these things. How can I help you? And he's like, you really can. I'm not interested in franchising. I'm not interested in any of that stuff. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, I want to learn this. So can I just come work for you for free and you teach me? And I promise I won't open a store near you. And he's like, free? So again, right? What's in it for me is free labor, right? And so did that. And then really at that point, it was, okay, I'm serious about this. And my family got behind me, and they're like, hey, here's 600K. You should be able to open up a store anywhere. Where do you want to do that? And my aunt, who was one of the investors and lived in Bergen County, New Jersey, she's like, you should come to Jersey. So in January of '08, went out to Jersey, and she's showing me around. And I said, look, Auntie, no offense, but if I'm leaving LA and I've opened up restaurants in San Diego, Orange County, LA, I'm like, I'm not going to come to Jersey and open up a small frozen yogurt shop. But if we cross that bridge, and that's New York City, right? And I really didn't know much about New York City. So it was funny. But that was to me, again, once again, like, how do I turn that into the advantage? And she was like, are you kidding me? Pinkberry already has 13 locations there. They own Froyo. And I was like, great. These are all good things. And so, part of it is being able to kind of like see that as an opportunity as opposed to deterrent. And then again, having that first mover advantage as the real value proposition of, if I can come into this market and I can execute well and really provide something of value that this market hasn't seen, then it gives me a fighting chance. And that's really what I needed. I'm like, it's one location. People ask me, well, what was your plan B if it didn't work? There was no plan B,
Yeah.
right? It was a one-way
Burn the
ticket,
boats.
and and I needed to make it work. And so,
I
and
like
looking
no plan B.
at that, and so, and so that's really what it was. Is it was identified as, oh, you brought self-serve frozen yogurt to New York City, so that was something that I could check off. And sure, it's first mover, but it's not a competitive advantage. And I knew I probably have like a 1 year head start before the copycats start coming. And
Yeah.
so I just maximized on that, and started really wanting to build brand, right, and kind of leaning into. So again, what was kind of the unfair advantage there was, well, 2008, I'm sure Sean preaching to the choir here, but that was really also the advent of how social media became accessible to the masses, specifically with Facebook, right? And so here we are, and I'm in East Village, which is where NYU and all the college kids hang out, and they helped me create Facebook business page. Mind you, I was only 28 years old, so it's not like I was that old, but that's a generation removed. Like I didn't grow up with social media, I didn't have it in college, or even as a young adult, and so I learned from my employees and my customers. Right, they set up my pages for me. They're like, download Twitter. I'll never forget. I had Foursquare. If you remember Foursquare, they reached out to me.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations, you're one of the most checked in businesses in East Village. Our HQ's in East Village, and I knew nothing about New York City, and I'm like, what do you want from me? I'm not paying for it. I didn't sign up for it. Like, no. Like, we want to send you stickers. We want to get more of your customers to do this. I'm like, why? Like, what are you asking them to do? And again, like to me, it was like over my head, but I realized I'm like, wow, there's this real digital social media movement, and my customers and my employees care about this. And I set out to open up 16 handles to create, the frozen dessert shop for the millennial consumer. And so I'm like, this is what they want. This is how they're communicating. It's irrelevant whether I like it or not. I need to adopt this because this is what they're doing. So to me, it was really kind of going to where the puck was going, as opposed to, well, do I believe this or not? Or do I like this or not? I'm not the customer, right? I'm building a business for them. And as long as I kind of lean into what they want, then they'll take care of me, right? Because it'll show that I'm listening and that I care and that I'm building something that has a personal, emotional connection, as opposed to just a transactional business that's selling them something where, quite frankly, let's keep it real. Froyo had its boom moment. And just like anything else, when you have a fad, it comes crashing down. But to me, I looked at that as if I can build brand in this journey, then that's going to be what sticks. And it doesn't matter if I have the best vanilla Froyo or not. If my customers resonate with what this brand is here for, which is really to follow her along her entire dietary celebration, develop like vegan flavors, all this stuff, then to me, like that was going to be the winning, that was going to be the sauce. Like that was going to be the winning model.
Yeah.
And then franchising really just opened up the ability to scale without raising capital. And so to me, it was a bootstrap 14-year journey. I never raised outside capital. And was able to get into not only multiple states, but at one point another country. And so to me, it really just accelerated that journey. And there was a lot that I learned during that time. But for me, it was that, right? Looking into another unfair advantage there, where I'm like, look, I have the first mover advantage, right? You only have the first mover advantage, or you don't. And being first isn't always the best, but to me, I use that to my advantage, where I'm like, look, I have this moment where it's a short window and all eyes are on me. What do I want to do with that? And to me, it was very much like, let's build a brand that leans into her lifestyle. I say her because anytime I refer to 16 handles, 75% of our customers, according to our data and loyalty, was a she, or at least that's what she identified as.
Well, it was 74% when I started making money.
Yeah, it started changing once.
When did you start making money?
When I became a delivery driver at the Coco's, which we've talked about, Sean. Best pizzeria in Oceanside, Long Island, top 5 in New York, probably top 10 in the world. But I've been a part of the Beanie Baby craze and the Froyo craze. I like the Froyo one better. So thank you, Solomon.
Yeah,
that was awesome.
So now being on the side of investor advisor for other startups, that is one of the things I look for. Is I'm like, what is your, what's your edge? Like, what do you have that can be your, it's either competitive advantage or again something that is either being overlooked or undervalued. And to me, I'm like, cool. Like if there's an opportunity for me to be involved, again, either as advisor or investor, let's exploit that in a good way and really use that to weaponize the propulsion of your business and to really, again, go deeper and wider at the same time. And so
what was really impressive about your brand, Solomon, is again, I grew up for the most part on Long Island, not in Long Island, as Solomon had discussed, but on Long Island. And we had a red mango and a pink berry pretty much in the same town. And anybody who was anybody was like, hey, these are cool, but have you been to 16 handles? And so it was like, again, we were out on Long Island hearing about this brand that was growing like crazy in the city. Everybody would go visit their sibling at, in the city, NYU, wherever, and come back and be like, 16 handles. What are you guys doing? Why are we going with the red mango and pink berry? So really the brand almost had this kind of like allure when you were out on Long Island.
The other thing I'll give credit to Todai where it's due was, again, I think coming from the buffet setting, I realized after working for 18 months in my father's restaurant in San Diego, people loved having choices. their eyes were bigger than their stomachs.
Mm-hmm.
The best time to go to a buffet is right when they open. Everything is pristine, everything is full, everything's glowing, steaming, and it is just calling out your name. And you just feel like, oh my, you feel like a king or a queen, right? Like, and so to me, like leaning into that, where it's like, how do I replicate that feeling of, again, like kind of being, and that's what that model did, right? And so from an experiential standpoint, where, you know, if you're talking about retail and that retail experience, and I think this will probably be a good segue at some point, but you know, that's not just brick and mortar anymore. And I think that's what the pandemic kind of proved out, if you didn't already know or believe that. But that journey, whether it be in store, right, in your four walls or online, like that's all part of the brand experience. And I think it's so important that and again, I'm glad that I was very sensitive to that. And so anytime those opportunities came up, I leaned into it. And I'm like, even if I don't fully understand it, I can squint and see that that's probably the truth, right? So let's just keep following that. And if it isn't, then we'll go back to what we're doing or we'll pivot. But you know, to me, I'm like, I don't see a lot of companies doing this, and most of them, from what I was seeing, was wait and see, right? And I didn't mind taking that first step. I mean, clearly, right? I mean, making the move from LA to New York City, and you know, opening that up in that first winter, man, like I never knew how to shovel snow. How would I? I mean, I remember my neighbors made fun of me, restaurant guys, Greek brothers. They're like, they used to call me, they called me California boy or something like that. They'd be like, oh, California boy, what's wrong with our street? What's wrong with your store? And I was like, oh, did they not clean my like, did I pay some? They start laughing. They're like, no, who are you paying? They're like, you got to do it. I'm like, why did I do it? And then they're like, you want to borrow our shovel? And I'm like sweating out there. They're like, do you have salt? And I'm like, I'm a dessert shop. Why would I have salt? They're like, no, I mean like the salt for the streets. And I'm like, what? Yeah. So there was a lot of things where in being first and not having any mentorship, I had to learn the hard way. But fortunately, those were things I could recover from.
The results are in. National Restaurant Association show. Kyle and Sarah and myself, we were at the Davos sales tax booth and we were polling restaurant owners on the floor. This was a very unscientific poll, but the results are resounding. Restaurant owners do not like sales tax. Nobody likes sales tax. Doesn't matter what business owner you are, small business, big business. Davo automates the sales tax process. We are so grateful that Davo is the sponsor of this show. They automate sales tax at our Cali barbecue restaurants. It is $50 a month. It integrates with all the major point of sale partners, including Toast. So if you want to sleep at night, if you want to not worry about sales tax, go to Davo, check them out, Davo Sales Tax. Let us know how they're helping automate your sales tax in your restaurant so that we can share your Davo story on Digital Hospitality.
Hey everyone, Avi Gorin, CEO and co-founder of Marqii, and I want to talk about the customer journey for a second. You never know as a restaurant owner where your guests are truly coming from. End of the day, we do see some patterns around two types of search behaviors: direct versus discovery. Direct search, for an example, would be jumping into Google and saying Cali barbecue hours, right? I know where I want to go to eat, but I'm missing a key detail. I need a little bit more information. Discovery, which is the bulk of searches, is barbecue in San Diego, restaurants near me, takeout near me, right? One of the best ways to be found for more discovery searches is leveraging keywords. Reviews are basically free content for you to leverage. Think about keywords that are relevant to your brand, your location, and include as many of those in your review responses as possible, right? How can you go about doing this? Let's set up reports, utilize tools like Google Trends, find out what's going on in your area and how you can help leverage these keywords and review responses, because someone else is doing that, right? If you need some examples, you could do anything from including summer menu, gluten-free menu, leverage specific menu items like the dreaded and beloved spice pumpkin anything in your review responses, right? Let them know what's coming. Let your reviewers know something they should come back and try. And of course, if all of this just seems overwhelming and daunting because you're already running a restaurant and have enough on your plate, just leverage the team at Marqii to do this for you. We handle all of this. We're experts in this space. We can automate this so it's just another item that you know you are taking care of. Again, that's marqii.com, marqii.com. Know you. However, we did recently buy marquii.com, so if you do misspell it, we got you. You'll still find us. We can still help you. By the way, Sean, I was wrong. The first time I made money was when I started shoveling snow. There is nothing
Ah,
better than a 75 to 80-year-old neighbor on Long Island. Nothing better. You're talking 20 to 40 bucks a driveway.
yeah.
Yeah, minimum. It was great.
You start a subscription business back then?
I wish. I wish that was a good old fashioned door knocker.
Uh, Solomon, I'd love to talk about guest experience in 2023 and beyond. I mean, there's a reason why we have Marqii on the call and Avi and everything that he's built. And you mentioned, 2008, and that's the year that I opened up my restaurant in 2008, and 2007 is the date that I always, June 29th, 2007 is when the first iPhone came out. And the reason why we do this show is because everything's gotten so complicated. So many restaurateurs, when I talk to them, when they first meet me, they're hesitant, whether it's on LinkedIn or whether it's on TikTok or through email or they find a podcast, they're hesitant because it's just, you look at these graphs of how many technology companies are in the restaurant space, and it's a big overwhelm. I mean, I don't know how many point of sale systems are there, 180 different point of sale systems, something, along those lines. But when you think about guest experience and you think about all these different platforms, you were an operator at 16 Handles, and people were telling you about Foursquare, people were telling you about Facebook, and now the list is endless of how many different places that your business needs to show up, and that people are writing reviews expecting somebody from the store, from management, from the brand to go, oh, hey, thank you for coming in, I'm sorry we messed this up, or thank you for the kind review. How do you look at the lens of, someone that's listening to this right now, guest experience in a digital sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for one, you're right. And I've also talked to entrepreneurs, those who've been in business for a very long time and kind of were more old school with their approach, as well as new startups now that are looking to expand and scale. And I think at the end of the day, like, we're in this hospitality industry to serve our customers, to make them happy, so that way they keep returning and to earn their loyalty. And now, while there are a lot more options and choices than before, I mean, that's kind of the gift and the curse. You could look at that as, well, there's, paralysis by analysis. Like I said, there's 180 POSs, the old one that I was using, it still works.
Yeah.
And then you look at all these other tools that are ancillary where you're like, but I was never paying a monthly fee for, like, why do I need to do that now? And I think the first thing is to really just have this mindset of, do you truly want to do what's best for the guest? Right. And I think if you were at the heart of every person who's in hospitality for the right reasons, that answer is an overwhelming yes. There's no if, and, or buts. And so now it's like, okay. And if somebody came in and your menu item, for instance, like, didn't accommodate their needs, right? Their dietary needs, their religious, whatever it may be, wouldn't you try, if you were there, wouldn't you as the owner, like, try to accommodate them if you could? And I think, like, it takes it back to that. So think about, from front of house to back of house, you have the operational wherewithal to be able to accommodate them to the best of your ability. I think when it comes to now thinking about it from digital, that's where some people get scared. But I think leaning into in the same way, it's like, hey, you don't have to get it right in terms of, well, which one is it? If there's 180, which one's the best one? Which one's the right one? And I think it's more of, again, this mindset of what is it that you're trying to do and achieve. So if it is about truly being hospitable to your guests, then just like if they're in your restaurant and you would want their feedback, right? I mean, I remember my Todai days doing the table touches, right? Going around,
Yeah.
How's everything? Is everything great? Like, to be able to do that at scale on digital, like, if you don't have tools that are powering you to do that, it's impossible. I'll never forget this. One of the reason I named it 16 Handles was kind of the homage to the movie, and then wanting to own a number. I grew up in Southern California, so it was 31 flavors Baskin Robbins, when it was the old school 31 font.
Yeah.
Before it became the whole fancy BR, it was 31. So
Yeah.
before I could read words, I read numbers. And when I'd see that 31 in a plaza that my mom would drive into, I'd go crazy. So I wanted to recreate that. But
did you actually
that,
have you had 16 handles?
So check this
but could
out.
you
So each
could
one
you
of those,
custom so could you make more than I mean, how many different combinations could you make with the 16? However many?
well, no. So each one of those tailor machines actually comes with a middle twist,
Okay.
right? So technically, there are 3 handles on each machine. And I'll
Okay.
never forget this. And this is, I think, very apropos to, again, listening to the customer. So when I first opened up the store, I had 8 machines, right? Because I thought, like, you put 2 flavors in each machine, right? 2 hoppers, but you technically have 3 handles because you have the middle twist. And it was within the first week. I wonder if it's still there, but there was a Yelp review. That was one of the first ones I got. And again, so to me, I'm like, Yelp is a way that I'm able to, at scale, at least, like, be able to see customer reviews. And there was one guy, I remember it was a guy, and he wrote on there, he goes, yeah, I went to 16 handles in quotes, and he goes, I counted 24. And I read that and I was like, oh my goodness, right off the bat, I'm lying to the customer. My sign says one thing and the in-store experience is another. Literally because I read that and I said, thank you for pointing this out. And the next day I removed the middle handle. So that was where I was the first in the industry. Like no one was doing that in a self-serve setting
No
because you
way.
think like, why would you remove that? But to me, I'm like, I wanted to stay true to the fact that it is 16 handles. A guest pointed out the fact that I kind of made an oversight, but it gave me the opportunity to correct it. And in going forward, that's what that's what it was. And I thought, also it's self-serve, right? They don't need the middle twist. They could technically
Yeah.
make a mix of both. And so I wasn't taking something away from the guest, but that was interesting. So even that, like that was just a great example where if I didn't have
Yeah.
those listening tools around me, then how am I supposed to know? Right. And
I
that's
have a
probably
middle
something
twist
that's more
question.
comical, right? But again, like it could be something
Yeah.
more serious where let's say I'm bothering guests, but I don't know what it is just because I think that I'm doing great and there's a line out my door. So everything must be perfect. And so there's always room to be able to improve. Sorry, Avi, you were saying something.
No, 100%. Well, I had a middle twist question. On the one day you had them, how much thought went into the flavor matching? Because I have seen just some bananas flavor matching where like this middle twist makes no sense.
In our store or
It's just in general, when you had the middle twist for the one day,
oh
what
yeah,
was your
well
flavor pairing?
so that's a great point. So internally, now this is now behind the veil. I was like, this also opens up so many fewer opportunities for someone to create like a negative experience for themselves, right? Like you were saying, like if you don't have something that pairs well, and mind you, over the
Yeah.
years we developed so many flavors. So you know, between that and then we allowed our stores to be able to kind of put whatever flavors they want outside of the 8 core flavors. That's a lot of risk you're taking, because that individual at the store might think that you know strawberry and I don't know, like cinnamon may be like a good combination. So like it did minimize that maybe like weird or
Yeah,
unpleasant guest experience. So to me, I looked
funky
at it
ones
from
out
this, I was
there.
like, oh, this is great. It minimizes that, and also if we have to do flavor changes or we run out of something, we don't have to worry about what's going to go next to it. So that actually operationally ended up helping us. But yeah, I don't know. I
Yeah.
can't speak for everybody else, and I'm sure there have been experiences where you go into a store where they have that middle twist, and because they have it, that's kind of the gift and the curse, right? Someone's going to try it. Inevitably, you put a handle in there, someone's pulling it, right?
Yeah,
By accident or by
100%.
intention. And if it
My
doesn't taste
favorite
good, now it's like, yeah.
my favorite and my family's favorite soft serve ice cream place in Long Beach is called Marvell. And Solomon, if you ever take your family out to Long Beach, Lido, that area, go to Marvell. It's unbelievable. The only issue is they pair like pistachio with coffee. And like I don't want to offend anybody, but like I want my coffee with vanilla, and they won't mix individually. You only can mix the middle. It's very frustrating. But the ice cream's unbelievable. So if you ever get a chance, Marvell.
What's
Noted.
what
Yeah.
what's amazing about your story and your Yelp review of the 16 handles is I literally just took my 4-year-old daughter and my 6-year-old son to 31 flavors. And I went to 31 flavors and they're looking at all the flavors and they're
They
asking all these
counting?
questions. Do you know how many flavors there are?
There's not 30. You can't do 31. It'd be weird. Like it has to be an even number, right?
I started thinking about it because I'm explaining it to my daughter and I was like, "Oh, what 31 flavors? That's amazing." And then I start counting and I'm like, there's no way they have 31. They have to have 32. And sure enough, there's 32 there. But when you think about operationally the feedback that you get that can transform your business, and you think about the feedback that's available on all these platforms, how do you advise the brands that you work with, the multi-unit locations, when they're like, well, we just have so much data. We have Facebook we have to respond to. We have Yelp we have to respond to. We have Google we have to respond to. TripAdvisor, all of these different places. How is it possible to actually use that information to make a powerful operational decision?
That typically is the first kind of knee-jerk reaction as an excuse is there's just so much out there, right? Like there's no
Yes.
way that would be another full-time job, and that's not why we got into this business. And every time I hear that, I kind of cringe because I'm like, but there's solutions that can help you do that. And so it's really that is there are solutions now that are built now, but I mean, think about it. When you started, these solutions weren't there, right?
Yep. No.
These were not just nice to haves. Like these would have been game changer, and they are now available and only getting better over time as they iterate. So the thing that I say is, I'm like, again, first, let's remove this fear of what you don't understand Because if, again, let's go back to the main belief of, do you want to do everything in your power to give the guest the greatest experience that he or she can have, right? And if the answer is yes, okay, now remove yourself from that equation, because you're literally you're in your own way, right? And so now using that lens, like, let's look at what are the ways that you're able to de-risk offending them or not responding to them time or doing these things without adding more work to you and your staff. And that's the give and take. That's the tug of war, right? So I mean, I'm sure I'm not the only one here, but at a time, like, there were 6 tablets like in our stores, like on the back counter, before there were aggregators, right?
Yeah.
Why? Because, again, we wanted to do what? Serve all of our guests. Now, that at that point, you can look at it as, yeah, well, and it is greed, right? You want to take advantage of every single sales channel there is. But in order to keep them engaged, in order to keep them loyal in your ecosystem, and hopefully converting to 1P at some point, you need to make sure they're happy. So it's great that you have all these channels to be able to get more sales. But if you don't really know what's going on, and if you're only relying on your in-store staff to get that, which is opinions at best, right? I'll never forget that. It'd be like, I'll give you an example. Like, this is where, again, data doesn't lie, data doesn't have feelings, right? The
Correct.
people that
Objective. It's objective. It's not subjective. Yeah.
You meant, Avi, you reminded me because you said pistachio, and I will tell you this: pistachio is a bottom 10 flavor in terms of movement and sales. It is a top 5 flavor in terms of they are super loyal to it. The people who love pistachio are the most vocal, top 3 in terms of most vocal.
Most
And
it's
if you
always
don't have it or you take it away, like, they let you know. And I didn't even need to wait for a Yelp review. Like, they'll let you know in store. They'll be like, "Where's my pistachio? Where's my pistachio? Where's my pistachio?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, we moved it. Like, we rotate flavor." No, I only came here to get pistachio. And and so I'm like, "Well, would you like to try?" No. And they make such a big deal of it. And so it's so interesting there, where if you were to leave that up to your manager or your employee, or again, if another customer hears that, they must be thinking like, "Oh my gosh, like, they should keep pistachio in there all the time." But again, as a business, if it's the bottom 10 mover, you don't want that in there. And so it's real interesting how, again, you can take that data and do something with it. So what we did as a result of that, we're like, hey, we started selling. That's the only reason we started selling pints in our stores, was we're like, specifically with pistachio, let's keep that in our freezer. So when pistachio lady comes in, so sorry that it's not in the Karen handle. I think her name. I think they were all named Karen.
Karen
But I was like,
is that what you just said?
No, Karen's love pistachio. No, but they'd come in and make this big fuss and be like, "Well, we do have it. We do have it in pine for. I get it. It's not in the handle, but I still have it." Like, to me, it was like, okay, let's find creative solutions to do it. But again, it was really being able to take this feedback and do something about it. And that's the thing. Like, we talk about data, whether you're on the restaurant tech supplier side and the service side, or as an operator. I think that's where it's like data analytics, and it's like, great. So with that data, what are you going to do with it?
Yes.
You can have all the right answers to the test. If you don't actually, like, use those answers on the test, like, you're not going to get them right. And
So
so
that's been a big focus for what we've been working on the review insight piece, right? Because so much of this, when you look at the hospitality group, when you look at the operator side, you don't have data scientists. That's not what you're living. You're living in the moment. You're living with the person yelling, "Where's my pistachio?" And you're ignoring, like you just said, data, right? So on our side, we've really been focusing on this reshift on making both our review insights and our listings insights and those analytics into digestible pieces, right? Action items. How can you take insights from your reviews to connect the online feedback to the in-person experience, right? And keep this loop and this flywheel going, because without access to those insights, you're flying blind, right? You're flying off emotion. And so there's that mix of, that in-store emotion, and then leveraging some of these insights to make these kinds of changes and improvements, because that's what they are. They're improvements, right? We were just reading at our company Onsite, Unreasonable Hospitality. So I got a couple of really great nuggets that we love. And one of them is, right, praise is affirmation, criticism is an investment. And so being able to take that and make your product, your store, your experience better is just so valuable.
on that note, Avi, I'd love to give a real example also of, I remember there was one store in particular, and it's actually where Brian lives, your co-founder, but New City, that location for 16 handles, for some reason, I don't know if they did something to Google, if that franchisee like messed with the wrong person at Google, but the directory listing for hours would be wonky, and it would show it being closed on weekends, and that kept happening, and we'd keep having to fill out a ticket, and By the time that got resolved, like, another weekend had passed. And again, like weekend sales for, especially in the summer for frozen
Yeah.
yogurt, like, you can't afford to miss minutes, let alone days of it. And so I remember it was one of those things where as we became a franchise, and again, even if you're not a franchise, but you're multi-unit, how are you able to manually like catch that? Right. And typically when it's caught, it's after the fact, right? Someone complained. And how do you find out? From a customer complaint, right? Whether that's coming through email or Twitter or through Yelp, you're typically finding out after the fact. And then you're like, oh my goodness, not only did we mess it up with that individual, but others as well. And what sales didn't we achieve? When all that was it was a directory listing. That's not even pistachio. Like that's just like somebody turned off or turned on a button that we didn't. You know what I mean? And so how do you manage that at the multi-unit scale? You can't, like, meaning like I wouldn't be able to do that, nor would I want to, nor would I think it would be a great job for someone to sit there just kind of monitoring it like it was like the S&P 500. They're monitoring every single thing and looking at. But that's what I'm saying is there are tools that can do this, and to me that's one instance of where you can have a supplier or a platform weaponize your data, make sure it's out there the way it's supposed to be. And that way, at the very least, like that's the lowest hanging fruit of guest service and hospitality is where are you located, when are you open, and what do you got? That's kind of the basics. Like that's never changed actually, even pre-tech. Like
Right.
if someone was calling on the phone, when are you open until? And what are your and so to me, like the fact that there are solutions out there, like at the very least, like those are the ones that I recommend first, right? It's like let's get that right first, because if you don't have your bases covered, let's not worry about what AI and even like dynamic pricing and all this other stuff, which again are tools can do. Let's start with the basics, because in the same sense, if you were to go back to hospitality 101 in your store, what would you want your staff to do? Make eye contact, smile, speak courteously. Like these are just basics, and you expect that.
Yeah.
But again, can you imagine like someone pushes the button and all of a sudden your employees are rude, they're not making eye contact, they're not even speaking up. Like that's kind of what it feels like, because that's what it feels like to the guest when they're reaching out online for some kind of a connection, for some value of truth. And if it's not being delivered, and again, they're not blaming Google. I mean, you can blame Google after the fact or whoever. Like it's not just Google. I'm picking on Google only because that happened on Google so many times.
Right.
But that's where a solution like Marqii would have been a godsend, right? Where it's like, those are table stakes. Like I shouldn't have to worry about that. My manager shouldn't have to worry about that. That guest should not have had that experience. And that's an avoidable, like that's avoidable. And so, I think these tools again need to be looked upon as not just something that's confusing and I don't get it, but as, is this the best thing for my business, my brand promise, my guests at the store and online, and again, and for my employees, right? That's the other thing too. The other stakeholders, how do I make their jobs easier? Because sometimes this like tech, right? Like, again, as somebody who leaned very early in on that, like I oftentimes, especially early on, failed to think about how does this get executed like all the way through?
Yeah.
Which means I need to get buy-in, not just on me as the one signing the agreement and writing the check, but also the people that are interfacing with it and using it. So, but again, like don't make it so complex where it's like, yeah, like that's too much. I don't want to do it. These are all improvements that you can take incrementally to get to a better place. And guess what? There's going to be something else. There's a laundry list of things that we can improve. And you need smart people like Avi and his team to be able to find the tools and the solutions to build it out. But we're in this journey together, and it's not a matter of, well, do I have the best tech or not, or where do I start, or there's 180 of them, I have no idea. There's also solutions, right? I mean, there's platforms like this podcast that Sean puts out there. There's operators like myself that are happy to share and trying to build community to get more operators thinking in a way. Again, we're in this hospitality industry to be hospitable, and data and technology can help us with that. It doesn't need to be something that's so overwhelming. And I think that's the first thing I try to kind of overcome in talking to, especially a multi-unit, because I'm like, I'm telling you, like, if you think that you had issues now, when you scale
Yeah.
like that, those problems also scale, right? And they become harder to nip at the butt. Like, it's so much easier, right? If you can put in a solution when you're 1 or 3 locations, as opposed to trying to rip the Band-Aid off after you're at 30 or 50. And it's like, okay, now I have other stakeholders that I need to convince. It's like, get in on it early, but start with something. And that's the main thing. Start.
Solomon, I need to make this awkward for Avi before we wrap up this show. I need to know, because as somebody that sits in the position that you do, that's built the businesses that you have and now advises and invests in hospitality brands, did you bet on the jockey the horse or the race? I already know you're in the race. You're in the digital hospitality race. But when you decided to use Marqii and advise your brands to go with Marqii, was it because of Avi and the co-founders, or was it because of the horse that he's built?
That's a good question. I think it's a combination of both. And I'd be lying to say it's one over the other. So it is a combination of both. But I've also been, I over-index to investing my time, my resources into the jockey,
Me too.
because again, especially in this world of tech, I mean, for restaurants, it's harder to pivot, right? Like if you're doing Cali barbecue, it's probably a huge pivot to be like, you know what, Saul, you gave me a great idea. I'm gonna do all you can eat sushi. You know,
Yeah,
like
we're gonna do it. We're gonna
that's a
do an
real
all
hard
you can
pivot.
eat sushi buffet.
Not saying it can't be done with that name, but that would take a lot more, right? Whereas, like I think with tech, because we're in these different stages and innings, and things evolve, and the guest needs evolve, and so you can add features. It's much easier to pivot and be more fluid. So to me, it comes down to like, do I believe in that team to be able to deliver on that? You know, as opposed to like, is this the right product set and the features that I need now? Because they may change, they'll at the very least evolve in 5 years. And so do I believe that they're capable, and not just capable, but do they have the same mindset that this is like a fluid, fluid journey, and they're in it for the long haul, right? As opposed to kind of, we're first to market with this is what it is. And so yeah, I think it's a combination, but I never fall in love with the product in and of itself, because to me,
Yeah.
like that's great today. But I don't know how great or how relevant it'll be in the future. But you and your mindset and your team and the way that you lead your brand and your company, and how you work with your customers who are your stakeholders, that's more important to me. Like, are you going to continue
How
to
did you
grow?
first find Marqii?
Again, like I actually met Marquis years ago. I know that we had kind of that dinner last year, and that's where you and I, Avi, met. But I've met
Yeah.
people on your team. I met Paul. And I met them throughout the years. I think probably at the shows. Kind of being
Yep.
in, um, you know, the digital restaurant circuit. Obviously, like we kept missing each other somehow, but but I met them there, and had conversations and kind of learned about the product. That's why I love also attending these shows. And I kind of feel like I go on behalf of those operators, whether they're single unit or multi, who don't, because they're still stuck in their four walls, right?
Yeah,
Or they choose to be, right? And they don't want to be
right.
because they feel overwhelmed. And it's like, let me go then, let me do the research, and then let me find out for you and present kind of like what I've learned and what I see. And then, and then help you make a good decision for what you can do for your company. And again,
When are you
kind
going
of
to
ease
start
that
your
pain.
show? You need
What's
a
that?
show. You need a show
I
for
need
sure.
to. Yeah, I mean that's part of that's going to be part of it. Like
100%.
you gave me a blueprint of also how do I build community and get more scale in terms of being able to help a lot more people at
Yeah.
once. And again, I think that's also what I realized after doing the consulting gig, was I was like, that's not enough scale for me, right? That's
Yep.
too much lift. And at the end of the day, as a consultant, they don't have to do what I prescribed. And so I'm just kind of like, really? We went
Yeah.
through all that and we're not going to do it? I'm like, ah. And so at least with this new model where I have ownership and I'm putting skin in the game. I'm
Yeah.
putting
Right.
skin in the game, and you're trusting me to lead with certain things, which would include something like a tech stack, so that you can be set up to scale. And so now I'm kind of removing the hard parts for me, right? Maybe the parts that you're stuck with or you don't want to deal with. It's like, cool, let me do that for you. Like I did it for myself, it worked, and I'm continuing to learn. It's not like, hey, I'm going to just copy and paste what worked for me, because again, as we know, whether it's marketing or tech or
Yeah.
communication or even just trends and tastes, like these things keep evolving and it's faster and faster. And so to me, I'm like, I'm always out there learning. And so, as long as I keep doing that, we have a good shot that, I'll have the current information to make the best decision for now. And then hopefully something that we can, grow into or grow with into the future.
So Avi, you get a chance to put Solomon back on the hot seat. I need a difficult question. No
Ooh,
softballs.
difficult question.
Yeah. An
Um,
insightful question
what?
that can help propel the technology to the next phase. I mean, this is the thing that I
So
love, is that restaurant leaders now have a voice if we're willing to publish, if we're willing to look stupid, sound stupid, eventually figure out this internet storytelling. We can connect with people like you, and you go, well, Sean's maybe not that crazy, because it's not just my barbecue restaurant that I care about. I care about this entire industry, and that includes restaurants all over the globe. That eventually, when this podcast gets translated into multiple languages and Marqii is available on all these other countries, we'll know that we're doing the hard work now. So ask us the tough questions, Avi. Go.
He's like, oh man, he
I,
was going to ask me what my favorite flavor was, right? Because I've never
I
had
was
that.
literally was going to be like, how do you decide your favorite? Okay. Um, Look, I think on our side, because we've been doing the question asking, we've been trying to get more and more customers involved in interviews on this part of the next iteration of Marqui's product. When you look at that customer experience on the digital side, I've seen a shift as a customer, but on the restaurant side, where have your value props gone? What sites, what energy are you putting into certain places? Whether it's a move into catering, are you trying to get back into office spaces? Are you leaving any kind of office catering? The online ordering situation, how much can you do first, third? Where have your energies and focuses gone for the customer feedback? Because again, forgetting COVID just for a second, the last 10 years, there's been a massive shift, right? Groupon mania is a thing of the past, right? Everything has kind of shifted and trended. So as you're advising these multi-unit franchises, potentially with multiple concepts, where are you telling them to put their energies?
John, you prompted him. I wanted like an honors level question. He just gave me like an AP level
He's
or
coming
like a
along.
master's.
The more job co-hosting he does,
Yeah.
the better he'll get at the deposition side of
No, but I
co-hosting.
think that's a very appropriate question, Avi. Very, very, very thoughtful too. And to me, again, like this is one opinion on one data point. But to me, I think in the grand scheme of things, again, kind of going back to what I've been preaching, which is like, what's the best thing for the customer? Like, what's the best guest experience? There's so many tentacles now that can lead into that.
Mm-hmm.
Going to a lot of these shows, especially as of late, and I'm sure you've seen it even with some of the shows that you've been at. But really, as I look at these, what's the focus on? It's interesting to see it going back to kind of the basics. And so for one, it's taking care of those who are going to take care of your guests, right? So like I know that what the pandemic did in terms, especially with hourly employees, and I think the million that never came back, even post pandemic, it's how are we first like getting the right employees to fill in those seats that or not fill in the seats, but fill in the slots and the shifts that we were used to having them in, having them do things in a more automated and more tech dependent way, which again was not how things used to be. I'll never forget. I had a comment from one of my franchisees who said, Solomon, if I knew back in 2010 when I first signed to be a franchisee that minimum wage is going to be almost 2x, right? That we were going to need all these tablets and that I needed to be a tech and a data guru. Like, I don't know if I would have signed up for this franchise. And I thought that was a very fair point. But again, I said, but have I not along the way been able to make the iterations and find the solution? He goes, yeah. He goes, I'm just saying for me, my comfort level was I thought I could just buy the machines, put 2 employees in there, and then I make money. Because it was like that for a while. And I think that was also a good feedback to be able to understand that like you can't rest on your laurels, right? So in every aspect of your business, you need to look at how do I get better feedback loop, right? So whether that's with my
Mm-hmm.
customer, whether that's with my employee, and then do I have some platform, and again, we'll call it tech, we'll call it software, that's able to digitize that, keep it secure so it's there, so it's not lost. I remember the Red Managers books that would, and then be able to create action oriented plan around it. And I think that's the other thing is, to me, I like to
Right.
use this term like weaponize your data. And then people are like, what do you mean weaponize your data? I'm like, this is kind of a war, right? It's like if you take that, you're at war with, again, labor challenges and sales challenges and these challenges that are never going to go away. But there are solutions that are out there that are going to allow us to be better at doing it. And at the very least, like understand our business better and understand really at the root of what really matters to the guests, what really matters to our employees, what really matters to our stakeholders. And then to be able to, and then the weapon is really you. Are you going to do something about it or are you going to ignore it? Because it's there,
Mm-hmm.
right? As you would attest to, that data is there. And so these solution providers are capturing that and helping you do something with it. So to me, it's like, if those are the real answers and the real sources of truth, like, why would you not want that? Why would you turn a blind eye and be like, well, I don't get this stuff and there's too many choices? Like, I think that's what I would start with. And so it's not necessarily just one thing, but I think it is all of those things. And
Right.
the beauty of it is and all this data is talking to each other and you have integrations and so behind the scenes, what we don't need to worry about and look at, these things are appearing. And again, there's smarter people than us that are able to allow us to be very hospitable to our guests. And I think that's the beauty of it and why,
100%.
you can look at it as, oh, the margins aren't there as before. I'm giving X to third party, like all these excuses. And I call them excuses because at the end of the day, like people are going to need to eat and drink, whether that's in person and in their office, it's never going to go away. We're not bookstores and worrying about being Amazon. Like people are going to keep on eating. So to me, it's like, how do we create the highest level of guest experience where that's going to keep them sticky? And again, don't forget that that experience is now also living online, even outside of your brick and mortar store. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's my answer.
I loved it.
Well, we can't thank you both. Avi, you've been an awesome co-host. I can't wait for your next co-host appearance. No, but it's truly been an honor. I think, for anybody that's listening or watching this, your story matters, and you can connect with some of the greatest thinkers in the hospitality space by just having the courage to ask for help. So I know that both of these leaders are willing and able to connect with you. We'll put links to how you can connect with Solomon, how you can connect with Avi. No matter what size your restaurant is, no matter what size your business is, these guys are some of the best playing the game within the game. And we're very excited to see what both of you continue to build. If you guys want to connect with me, it's at Sean P. Walchef, SHAWN. PWALCHEF. Solomon, what's the best place for people to find you?
Find me on LinkedIn. It's my name, Solomon Choi, with all O's. Same thing for my my handles on Instagram. You'll
Solomon's a
probably see a lot
beast.
of my
He's a
family stuff,
beast.
so
He's a
I'm open
beast.
Komodo.
He's a beast on Instagram. So I appreciate what you're doing, Solomon, for sharing the story, not just the business side, but the personal side. Leaders that are out there producing content, telling stories. That's how we connect with people all over the globe. Avi, how's the best way for people to find you?
Shoot me an email, avi@marqii.com, marqii.com.
And why should people sign up for Marqii?
Because life is hard. Restaurants are harder. Let us provide you an easier button. Get all those manual, mundane, automated off your plate, and let us automate them for you, from reviews to menu updates, hours. Just make life a little bit easier.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for listening. We will catch you all next week. And as always, stay curious, get involved, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Thank you for having us, Sean.